Great. Well, welcome everyone to the July Alive Academy. I'm Kathy Toma, the Alive Vice President of Programs and Advocacy, and I'm so pleased that you could all join us today for this webinar focusing on improving staff and volunteer relations through staff training with Angela Williamson, CVA, and Paula Allen, CVA. Alive is very pleased to host this session. Have you ever asked yourself, do you struggle to create awareness in your staff surrounding your volunteer program and volunteer roles? Well, today, Angela and Paula are here to discuss two different staff trainings they use in their programs. You're going to learn what prompted Angela and Paula to create training for staff and understand how to frame success and possible roadblocks you could encounter in your own program. You'll also have a takeaway template to create your own training for your staff. The session is 90 minutes long, so the 60 minutes will be for the presentation, and then the last 30 minutes will be for Q&A. Of course, you can always put questions in chat, or the Q&A box is probably where you want to go for that. If you can't stay past the whole hour and a half and you are an Alive member, you can log into Alive's website and catch the replay later, but we do hope that you stay for the duration. A brief overview for our agenda for today, and we can go to the next slide, please. So we'll deal with some housekeeping issues and we'll do introductions, and then we'll have the presentation, question and answer afterwards, and then we hope you'll stay for some announcements at the end. So part of the housekeeping is if you are having trouble with audio visual today, you've got some options. You can keep us streaming in video on your computer, but call in from a phone with audio only. If you're having trouble with your bandwidth, sometimes calling in by phone will help. Put any other tech support questions you might have in the Q&A or chat box to presenters only, and Gretchen will help sort you out. Speaking of the chat box, if you want to talk to all attendees, actually choose the Q&A and choose everyone. And then that will help us all have conversations together, and you can share your experiences, and we can keep the Q&A going along. So with that housekeeping, I want to introduce Angela Williamson and Paula Allen. Angela Williamson, CVA, loves plants, people, connecting people with their passions, learning, and creative endeavors. She's worked in volunteer leadership roles for several years. Currently, she is at the Blood Bank of Delmarva. She's also the Alive Healthcare COP facilitator and is on the board of Delaware Association of Volunteer Administrators. She enjoys sharing and learning practical information. Paula is the volunteer program specialist for Satellite Healthcare, a nonprofit dialysis company making life better for those living with kidney disease, where she is building the organization's first volunteer engagement program. Paula has a bachelor's degree in history and a master's degree in museum studies. She achieved her certification in volunteer administration in April of 2019 and immediately began looking for ways to connect with the wider volunteer management community. Paula was the Vice President of Programs and Advocacy at Alive in 2020 and 2021, and she launched the DEAI Committee in 2021 and supporting the Advocacy Subcommittee. Currently, she is a member of the Programs and Advocacy Committee as well as on the DEAI Committee. She prizes the opportunity to collaborate with other volunteer engagement professionals to advance inclusive and proactive volunteer engagement everywhere. In her work, she focuses on three things: strategic planning, risk management, and diversity, equity, accessibility, and inclusion. And with that, I will turn the presentation over to Angela and Paula. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much, Gretchen, and thank you so much, Kathy. Really excited to be here today. I'm Angela Williamson, and with the Blood Bank of Delmarva, and Paula as well. So I'm really happy that you're with us, and I'm happy that Paula and I are able to do this together, and you'll hear more of that story, which I encourage you to stay for at the end. how this came about, because it's a very practical way, and I want to encourage you to think about doing this yourself. We were just talking about the imposter syndrome, actually, before we started this morning. And if you feel somewhat like an imposter, you are not alone. May I just tell you, we all are feeling it. And I think nobody wants to say it. So I'm just going to say it. I think we all have imposter syndrome. So there we go. We'll just get that out of the way. So thank you so much for coming in. And we're just going to jump right in here and keep moving. So Paula?
Yeah, thank you, Angela. And hey, everybody, glad you could join us. So where are you in this process of improving staff and volunteer relations? Gretchen's going to put the poll up for us, but we want to know where you're starting at. Is it that you're just learning about it, that you recognize it needs to happen at your organization, but you haven't started? Maybe you have already started improving staff and volunteer relations and you have some stories about what's working and what hasn't worked. Sometimes you might feel like this is your entire job, right? Like your program is running fine and all you do is put out fires and connect staff and volunteers together. Or maybe your focus is somewhere else. Our chat doesn't seem to be working today, but the Q&A is. So if you choose other in the poll, go ahead and put where your focus is in the Q&A, because I don't think we can use the chat today for whatever shenanigans reason that technology has given us today. So we're all persevering through some hiccups here, but we'll give it a little bit of time for everybody to answer the poll. Gretchen, I don't know if you can see how many people have answered overall. Oh, Gretchen says she thinks she has chat turned on now. Sweet.
Yep, I think I've got it. And yes, everybody's awesome. We're 89%, and there's still a few more folks voting. Oh my
Great.
gosh.
Give it
94%.
just a little bit more time.
That's awesome.
Go quick, get it in. Go quick,
Yeah.
get it in, right?
Yeah. Wow.
Be honest about it, really.
Yeah, no, this is great. And I'm going to go ahead and close the poll and show the results. Thanks, everybody.
All right. So we've got some folks recognizing this needs to happen. Decent. Almost half of you have started improving relations. Only about 11% of you feel like this is your entire job. So that's probably good. And 5% of you said other. So I don't know if anyone, it doesn't look like there's any chat or Q&A that explains the other, but that's okay. Ooh, migrating databases. Gotcha. Sometimes the technical underpinnings of what we do is more important than the staff volunteer relations if you're stuck with that. Absolutely. Well, Angela and I are definitely in the, started improving staff relations piece. And you're going to see sort of the boots on the ground, what our efforts are, and also sort of our own critical thinking about what's working and what isn't. So next slide, please. So this you can throw into the chat, or you could raise your hand and we can unmute you. But what's something you've tried to do to improve staff and volunteer relations, and how did it turn out? I always feel like there's a lot of advocacy in what we tend to do. Like we start something and we're like, this is going to work. And then there's a hiccup and you're like, oh, I'm going to have to rethink this and do some advocacy and do it again. So if you're in that space where you've tried something and it's not been perfectly successful, you are not alone. We are all in the same space. All right, so some surveys, working on a video and a handbook for staff. Nice. Online training. Awesome. Directly involving staff volunteer coordination. I love it. That's the dream, right? Someone other than you being directly involved with volunteers. Pamphlets on how to work with volunteers. Great.
Ooh, nice. That sounds good.
Yeah. I'm just thinking about that actually, and turning my presentation into a fast facts pamphlet handout thing for
That'd be great.
all the staff who can't be bothered to remember what I presented on. Who knows? All right. I think, Angela, I'm going to turn it over to you. Next slide.
All right, well, thank you. So just as a point of introduction, we'll share just a little bit about ourselves. And so again, I'm Angela Williamson with the Blood Bank of Delmarva. Just a little geography lesson. If you're not from the East Coast, or maybe even if you are, Delmarva is a peninsula. And Delaware is the yellow part there on top. The orange is the eastern shore of Maryland. Who thought there'd be an eastern shore of Maryland? And then the little bottom part is Virginia. So that's where Delmarva comes from: Delaware, Maryland, and Virginia. And Delaware, just for factoid information, has a whole 3 counties for the whole state. I came from Nebraska, so this is very tiny to me. But I was hired in September of 2018, and I was tasked with building a volunteer engagement program. And as you'll see on my next slide, there wasn't a lot of people or volunteers here. And so it's pretty much started from scratch. So with that, we had about 60 volunteers when I came. We're over 300 now. I've added several new volunteer roles to what happens here at BBD. And I will say BBD because it's shorter, and my term of endearment, right, for where I work. And I've added teams and several other roles that staff had just never even thought about. And so it was advocacy in that regard too. So later I'm going to say, don't give up, and keep trying. So that's what I kept doing, is I'd keep asking staff, could a volunteer do that? Could a volunteer do that? So that was something to throw out there for you as well. Our current program, we have 5 different centers, different buildings spread across the peninsula. We have mobiles across 4 states that go mobile drives that have big buses, and then we take those out and do blood drives that way. And we have volunteer opportunities that volunteers can do at home as well. So my current goal really is improving staff and volunteer integration and that relationship. And so far, it's growing slowly, and there's starting to be a little bit more awareness. As you'll see today, I was able to start doing new hire orientation, and just this week, new news is that I'm able to hopefully get in with a certain staff department and do a presentation with all staff of that department. So I'm really excited about that. So Paula, take it away for you.
Yeah. So a little bit of setup for me. I'm the volunteer program specialist at Satellite Healthcare. Our purpose is to be the catalyst for the transformation of kidney care, and our mission is to make life better for those living with kidney disease. They hired me September 29th of 2020, kind of towards the last day of the 3rd quarter, and they wanted me to build a volunteer program from scratch. They've never had volunteers before, so that's an interesting education process. We operate in 7 states with 90 dialysis centers, and we're always growing. I think we just added 2 this week. So next slide, please. That's where we started. So where we're at now, so they hired me in September of 2020, and they were like, hey, by the way, our goal this year is to have a volunteer program by the end of the year. So in less than 3 months, can you build a volunteer program in a healthcare space and find some volunteers and meet that goal? And I was like, okay, people, let's do this. So my very first volunteer was actually December 26th of 2020, just under the wire, 1 volunteer in a single role. Our current program, as of July of 2020, we have 24 volunteers in 5 different roles, and we have 5 centers of those total 90 plus. And they're all within 2 hours drive of me for reasons. I will not be driving or flying to Texas, Hawaii, South Carolina, Georgia, New Jersey, or Tennessee to start a program from scratch, right? I've got to build the capacity here first and then scale it up later. Our current goals are improving staff and volunteer integration, because staff really don't understand the volunteer perspective at all, having never worked with them before. Increasing ways volunteers can interact with our mission, because some folks are pretty dead set on like, this is the one way volunteers can help. Oh, wait, there's other options. Oh, I'd never thought about that. And then risk management, just I'm new to the healthcare space. I was in, museums and cultural institutions before this. So I put a very big portion of my time into understanding appropriate risk management. So the results so far this year is a booming program growth. It's officially our 2nd year, and we're just the graph keeps going up and up and up of how many people are involved and what they're doing for us. We're starting to get positive attention from staff that don't have volunteers yet. And the volunteers themselves are feeling welcome and safe and well set up for their new roles. So doing good. Angela, over to you.
Okay.
Why do you have staff training that's just new hires to improve your volunteer relations?
Right, absolutely. So new hire is the one way I thought I might be able to get in to do presentations for all staff. That would be the goal, is for all staff to have some kind of training at some point, but new hire was the place I could jump in. And so I was able to do that. And why I like the new hire orientation is that I get to see every single new staff person being brought in to the organization. No matter where they go on the peninsula, everybody has to go through new hire orientation, and I get to see them. They get to see me, and then they get to know me in that 15 minutes that I have. At least they know that we have volunteers, that I'm the person to talk to about volunteers. And even if they don't remember anything else, at least that face and association will be together, and it creates that friendly relationship from the very beginning. It can also spark conversations about where to recruit new volunteers, depending on where they've been coming from. Also, I find, and what my philosophy was, that in departments that don't have volunteers right now, when or if we do add volunteers to that department, those folks are already going to know we have volunteers in other places. They're helpful, they make a difference, and gosh, we get them now. And so then they'll hopefully be more in tune and welcoming and more understanding when we do add volunteers into those departments. So I really think it's great to do a new hire because I'm catching everybody at the very beginning. And again, it's a friendly way to get them introduced to me, them introduced to volunteers, and set that up. I also encourage you to think about setting up meetings with supervisors, directors, whoever manages staff, to talk to them about presentations and what might be able to happen and how volunteers can help you. So Paula has a little different philosophy because it's a different organization and a different need and process that she has right now.
Yeah, so I target specific staff for training, partly because staff are just overwhelmed with COVID right now. And only the 5 centers out of 92 plus have the luxury of having volunteers. So I don't sort of want to waste the time of folks who aren't going to have volunteers for another year or two and take up their time. One of the barriers I face to doing these trainings is center managers who will tell me, well, we only have 15 minutes or less to come together as a group and listen to you. Like, we don't have half an hour. You can't have our lunch break. You know, we don't have that time right now. We're just run off our feet with COVID and dealing with that in the dialysis space. So I've been focusing my efforts just on the 5 centers that do engage volunteers and building relationships with those individual staff so that they remember who I am when I call them. And when I show up, they're not like, who are you again in our space? I work from home, so I don't see them frequently, but when I do go, I want them to know who I am. And the entire program really still is in pilot mode, this being our 2nd year. So we are looking at small expenditures of resources and sort of proving things as we pilot new things. Next slide, please. So where are you in the process of training staff? Gretchen's going to open our 2nd poll. Are you either thinking or currently doing one of these things? Are you training all of your staff? Are you only training your new hires like Angela? Are you thinking or targeting only specific staff like me? Are you able to do nothing now? Like, did you say, hey, I'd like to get everybody together and you were shut down and you need some advocacy tips? Because we've been there, both Angela and I both. Or is there something else going on? Are you thinking of doing something else? Like, maybe you're just interested in your senior leadership, right? Letting your senior leadership know, like, hey, there's a volunteer program. It's beneficial. These are the reasons why. Go ahead and vote and tell us where you're starting with your process. I think all of these are valid, and we've all been there with the advocacy as well, needing to get our foot in the door or a seat at the table. but it helps to think through like what is going to be the lowest hanging fruit for you to start with, sort of to say like, look, I did move the needle. I could do it again. I could do it for a different group, that kind of thing.
So we're
How many people have answered the poll?
33.
Okay.
80%. I'm gonna just keep this open
Close.
for a few more seconds.
Great. In
And
the chat, I see people doing both new hires and specific staff. Training all staff once a year with 16 minutes of training and a pamphlet
Nice.
for new staff in between. Nice.
Ooh, I like that idea. That's a great one.
Attempting to get staff buy-in again for training new hires. I hear that.
Been there. We've been
Yeah.
there. Still there.
Require a new front of house
There.
staff to attend volunteer orientation. Okay. So
Oh,
the people
I like
that
that.
presumably the volunteers see first, right? The folks that you hope will be like, smile and wave as a volunteer. Hi, welcome. Thanks for being here today.
And that's
All
great
right.
that the staff see what the volunteers are getting in their orientation.
Mhm. So it seems like targeting specific staff is the largest group, 42%. 28%, nearly 30% of you are struggling with the advocacy needed to put this into practice. Training new hires, training all staff, and other. Yeah, so we're sort of all over the place, but that's life, and that's all of us, really. Thank you all for chiming in and letting us know where you're starting from. Next slide, please. There we go. So what are your desired outcomes in training staff? As you're building advocacy, as you're thinking about putting this into practice, it's helpful to think for yourself, like, what is your main goal? Angela and I will talk about our goals and why we put certain slides in our presentations when we cover our specific training that we give. But are you increasing awareness with staff? Are you needing to like boost someone's ability or confidence to manage volunteers? Is it interpersonal communication? Would you like them to speak to each other rather than tell you 2 weeks later there was an issue that you now can't address in the moment? Are there generation gaps? Are there understandings or unspoken expectations that people are not meeting on either side because it's a generational misunderstanding of how volunteerism works or how service and the workplace works? Maybe you're looking to give everybody a basic foundational information about volunteer engagement and volunteer knowledge and expectations. Like, hey, they're not here every day. They need a little extra help coming in, getting updated, what have you. Maybe it's something else. As you watch us go through our slides of our real life practical ideas, be thinking about like what seems top of mind for your program. Over to you, Angela.
Okay, so earlier on, when I was getting frustrated when staff wasn't remembering, and I really don't think it was on purpose. I think there was such a gap of time between the last staff person who was officially in charge of volunteers and myself that I think that staff just sort of forgot that maybe they would need to tell me or the volunteers that schedules changed or different things that would happen around the institution or the centers or whatever it was. And so I started making little posters. This is it. Think, and the volunteers, don't forget, and the volunteers. So in meetings, I'm even like, oh, and how about volunteers? So I think they're getting used to it, and I think they're getting the message. And so that's been helpful. Do what you need to do that you can do in a good, fun way. But these are actual volunteers, so they would know some of their faces. And so I wanted them to remember the volunteers. So remember to schedule time for yourself to do some of this advocacy, whether it's posters, or maybe it's emails, or maybe it's better yet, one-on-one conversations with staff, whether at whatever level it is that you need to go with. Set up those meetings and don't give up. Please don't give up. It took me about 3.5 years and some staff changes. And now I'm in new hire orientation with 15 minutes. And so I just encourage you to keep trying and do different angles. Maybe you need to find a champion. Is there somebody in your organization that does get it, that does understand what volunteers can do in making your organization better, more efficient, allowing staff to do more, building that capacity, whatever it is that volunteers are doing for your organization, find that champion and ask them to help you promote that. It would be really good for staff to understand who volunteers are and what they do. And then share successes. Share the successes that you've had with the volunteers. What are the things that the volunteers that are doing that are making the benefit, and share those. One of the things that I've been working on with the relationship with staff and volunteers is appreciation. So appreciation, I was pulling this out of the five languages of appreciation from Gary Chapman and Paul White. And so in the application form for a new volunteer, they go online. I use Better Impact. You use, I'm sure, something else, but whatever it is, ask them. Mine's in a drop-down box. How do you like to be appreciated? And so they can pick like their certificate, which is more of a gift or affirmation, a gift, shirt, cup, obviously a tangible gift. Do they want a handwritten note, which is more of an words of affirmation? Do they want a personal verbal thank you? Maybe it's a shout out on social media. Maybe it's maybe it's the acts of service of you or the staff coming alongside them and working with them for 5 to 10 minutes to help in a very busy way, or just to get to know them and just kind of help them along with whatever project they have. In the 5 languages of appreciation, it does mention physical touch. And in that, I did decide to take that off as an option in my official questionnaire there online. However, that would be something you could work with individually. You know, do people like the high fives or the fist bumps, or these days the elbow hit? You know, what is it that those volunteers appreciate? And you'll see this come up within my presentation to the staff. Another thing that I'm trying, and just trying different modes of communication. And this is actually a piece of paper that I just did in Word and then copied and pasted and chopped them in pieces. And so it says, wow, I see good. Send this to me. And, you know, the date, the name, who you're recognizing, what happened, what the situation is. I also created, with the help of a volunteer, a Google Doc and a Google survey where now volunteers can fill that out online as well. So we have the paper versions, we have the online versions. So depending on what somebody's comfortable with, they can use that. And so I'm using this for volunteers to be able to say thanks and appreciation to the staff for maybe something that they did, and recognizing them that way. You know, I'm sure you and many of us go around and say, hey, staff, how do you appreciate, what do the volunteers do, and say thanks to them? You know, how do you do that? And just trying to find ways that volunteers are helping the staff, and how our staff saying thank you. But this is another way then to bridge that communication and having it going both directions. Sharing successes. So one of the ways that I started sharing success is creating my own annual volunteer report. No one asked for a report. I just started putting one together. After listening to several webinars and books and everything, I thought I need to just do one. And the more I've been reading some fabulous books, they encourage you to just start. And I watched a YouTube video yesterday that said, it's not going to be pretty the first times, are never pretty. So just do it. It's not going to be perfect. It's not going to be the prettiest thing in the world. It's not going to be where you want it to be. But if you don't take the first step, you'll never take a step, right? I'm sure that's a quote from somebody that I don't know who it is, but I'm sure that sounds famous. Anyway, so just take the first step. And so you're going to take your baby steps. So just get started. Start with anything you can put together in an annual report. How many volunteers do you have? How many hours did they share? What are some impacts, if you can even get those? If you can't get those, great. If you can only get impacts and not the numbers, do something. That's my message here, is start somewhere. And then you can also find volunteers, which I did, to help you with whatever part that you're not good at. I actually have a volunteer that helps me pull numbers out of Better Impact. He puts them into Excel, charts, graphs, beautiful things. And so I've included those now in this report from last year. I also had another volunteer who's more graphically adept than I am. And so she was putting this together in a more graphically pleasing way. And so I had a volunteer help me with that. So get started with something, find people to help you with whatever it is that you don't know or don't like to do, or whatever it is, right? Isn't that what we all are trying to do anyway, in some ways, to help us along and do better? And look for that evaluation and that feedback. I just did a survey for all volunteers, and it's been really helpful. I've been able to start addressing some of the challenges, issues, or questions, and there's some very positive comments that have come out of that I'll be able to share with staff. So just in all modes of communication, keep that open and keep trying to do different things. Keep trying something different. Any questions before I start into my actual presentation for the staff? Gretchen, anything that you've seen in the chat? Yes, share the annual report.
Yeah.
Yes, that will be, go ahead, Gretchen.
Oh, you go ahead and finish, then I have a comment while I'm looking for any other.
Okay.
I'll
Yeah, so the
share
annual
the annual
report,
report link again, but it'll also
Yes.
be attached to the recording.
so check the chat. The link should, for the annual report, should be in the chat.
Awesome.
Cool.
Wonderful.
All right.
And I just have one other comment that just a tip that was helpful for me in terms of just getting to know the staff is talking to them about their personal volunteer experience. Because I've found that people bring that, whatever that was, good, bad, indifferent, they bring that with them. And so if you can get an insight about what their past volunteer experience has been like, that might give you some insight of why that person might be, behaving in a certain way with the volunteers, whether it's, great or not great. Something that's I found has worked for me. And true story, the person that had the worst volunteer experience, guess what, was the person that was not great at working with volunteers.
Right, and it makes sense. It makes a lot of sense. And that is something I actually, you'll see I bring up in my talk. So it's great. So this is the actual presentation that I give to new hires at the blood bank. And so I exactly start with that very question. So good segue. Thanks, Gretchen. And talking about, have you ever volunteered? And so sometimes the whole room has volunteered in some way, and sometimes it's half the room. But I say, so if you've not volunteered, what would you think it would like to be, right? And how would you want to be treated? If you were volunteering your time, how would you want to be treated? What was it like? And then I do ask, like, was there anything that could have been better? And I preface it with, I'm not looking for dirt or names. I just, in general, thinking about what could have been maybe better. I go on to what or who is a volunteer, right? So it's a person, just like you and me, because we just talked about in the previous slide that you're a staff person with us now, and you're also a volunteer. And it's not like you just changed hats or capes or clothes or personalities. And so, same person can do the same, both. A volunteer wants to make an impact, and talking about how we're all on the same team and we're all working for BBD, and we're just maybe at a different pay grade and a different pay level. And so if you look at it that way, we're all on the same team trying to go the same direction. So then I mentioned, why do volunteers leave? So we talked about that a little bit. They have some good reasons. And then I have these. So just to point out how not to behave, and that we do want them to feel appreciated. We want them to be seen. And so then I talk about, why does it matter? Why does it really matter for them, the staff, to really care about the volunteers? So then I re-emphasize, right, that they allow you to focus on the paid role. The volunteers allow the staff to be able to focus on what they need to do, that they're specialized in. We don't need the phlebotomy staff that are sticking needles in arms to have to do absolutely everything, right? And volunteers aren't going to be sticking needles in arms. And so we need them to focus on that. And the volunteers are able to assist them in ways so that the phlebotomy staff can focus just on what they need to do. And that's what a BCT is, a blood collection tech. And that's the volunteers are helping them do their role. So again, another reason why it matters, the volunteers are helping behind the scenes. They're helping with the administrative roles, maybe some office work. They're helping accomplish more than if they weren't there. And so that return on investment, right? They're helping us do more. And again, in the blood center setting, it's really important for us to have blood donors come back. And so if we can give really great customer service, that's going to make the donors happier, and the donors are happier, they'll be more likely to return. And then if they're more willing to return, we get more blood, and that's what we really need. And end result, we really need happy donors to come in and to be able to keep donating, and volunteers can help with that. So what the staff can do, they can remember the volunteers that they're there and say hello. They can acknowledge them, ask them, do you need anything? How you doing? Thumbs up. Okay, great. Thanks. thank them for helping what they do. And the more specific they can be, the better. Thank you so much for being a friendly face for the staff or the donors, or whatever it is that they can do. This now goes back to the volunteer questionnaire and of how they like to be appreciated. So now I can show real information on how our volunteers at the Blood Bank of Delmarva like to be appreciated. 34%, which was the highest one, is that personal thank you and smile. I myself cannot travel across the entire peninsula and say thank you personally to every single volunteer, over 300, every single day, every week, or even every month or every year practically. So it's going to be really important for the staff to understand that just that personal hello and thank you will mean the world to at least 34% of the volunteers, and probably more, because who doesn't like at least a hello? Now the gifts, the shirts, the certificates, the handwritten notes, those kinds of things, those are things that I can do from the volunteer office. And so I really emphasize that the staff, the most important thing that they really can do to appreciate volunteers is to do that personal hello and thank you. I have a list here of where volunteers are so that staff will understand that they're throughout the institution and they're throughout the centers and mobiles. And this actually I stole from Paula. So, steal all you can and you'll get a template of my presentation. Actually, I don't think it will be the training. So you can add this slide. So note to self, put training that volunteers complete if you so choose into the template if you like. But I just stole this recently from Paula. She has this, but talking about showing the staff what the volunteers do for training. So that showing that we're not just pulling people off the street and setting them up in a spot. They go through bloodborne pathogen training, they go through orientation, they go through all sorts of training before they show up to do their volunteer role. I have the staff know that they can contact me. I'm the one to talk to about volunteers, any problems, issues, ideas, suggestions, all of those things. So again, it connects me with the volunteers and the staff will know who to talk to. I do a quick show of what our volunteer impact was the year before, just so that they can get a sense of like, wow, that was a lot of hours, and wow, that's a lot of in-kind donation. It's really important. And then I open it up for questions. So then, and that is Delmar, the bloodhound, our mascot. So that goes out so for fun. So those are questions, and that is the presentation that I do for the staff at the blood bank. Any questions for me specifically? And then otherwise we'll jump into Paula.
We'll also have time at the end of our presentation to brainstorm ideas for all of you, network, ask some more specific questions, but we're going to pause before I start my go through, just so if anybody was unclear with something Angela shared, you can ask a question now in the moment. But it seems like nobody's frantically typing into the chat, so I think we're good.
All right,
so
Paula.
Thank you. So just as a reminder, I'm targeting specific staff. So I'm giving this to the 5 centers currently integrating volunteers. And actually just this week, the dietitians reached out to me for an education assistant. So it seems likely that I will be giving this also to a specific department who's looking to engage basically students new that have just graduated with undergrad and dietitian work that are looking to get more experience so they can get an internship, etc. So I open this with, my favorite volunteer quote for the moment, which is volunteering is at the very core of being a human. No one has made it through life without someone else's help. No one ever pushes back on this yet, but I am prepared to discuss Margaret Mead and her anthropology work about the beginning of human civilization is the first fossil record evidence we have of an adult human being breaking their femur and surviving to have it heal, right? So that's like the underlying concept of our civilization is cooperation and helping somebody else. Volunteering can be just as simple as helping somebody in the short term. Next slide, please. There we go. So I talk a little bit about how the volunteer program enhances satellite to staff, just because it's so new. We're finishing up our 2nd year. I also put in photos of all of our volunteers whenever I can. I see the center manager sort of lean forward and try and decide, like, is that their center? Is that their volunteer? You know, they're always trying to see like, oh yeah, we know that one. Or wait, that's not my center. That's not the wall color in my lobby. Where is that? But not only that, you know, it engages the community in our mission and it gives our staff support, but that we're getting a more diverse viewpoint from engaging our community, that we're encouraging people to join us. One of my center managers is really excited right now that his volunteer, the first volunteer at his center actually came to us thinking, hey, I want some experience. I might want to become a doctor, but I don't know what I'm going to do yet. And in the year he's volunteered with us, he's decided to become a nephrologist. So that center manager is like telling everybody else, like, I have a volunteer who's going to be a nephrologist. Like, and it's a great piece of, you know, like outreach for me to have him telling other people, like, you know. And lastly, that, you know, I have to do a lot of education with our staff that some of our volunteers are very short term and that they're going to stay with us for their 24-hour minimum and then take their next step. But we're creating lifelong kidney advocates through transformative experiences. They're understanding like the actual burden of dialysis and kidney disease when they volunteer with us in patient-centered roles. Next slide, please. I like to talk about how our program is growing because no one seems to realize how high this graph is going up and up this second year. So to date, we've added 20 volunteers this year alone, 2 more centers, 2 new volunteer roles, 3 actually this week. We have a new pilot that just started. We have 24 total volunteers at the moment. We had some people leave for the summer because they were in school and they don't live in the state in summer. 3 of my volunteers are high school students. 3 of them are community members seeking to spend their time in valuable ways. And now 20 of them are college and graduate students. So I think before the program started, Satellite thought everybody was going to be retirees seeking to like spend their time in valuable ways. And that is just not our demographics at all. So we talk about who these people are they're going to be seeing in their centers and how long they're going to stick with us. Next slide. I also cover how our volunteers serve. We started with our very first greet and assist patients in our centers. That was at the heart of COVID surge, December of 2020. Staff were overwhelmed. It was great to have a second pair of hands, greeting patients, asking them how they were feeling, making sure they were socially distanced, wearing masks, and taking temperatures. That is still the bulk of what we do. We have pilot programs, birthday cards starting this week. We're calling it Cards for Kindness. Just a volunteer in high school at home signing a card to a patient on the occasion of their birthday with HIPAA training. The volunteers write the volunteer newsletter, 5 volunteers, 4 volunteers. They provide leadership support in onboarding new volunteers since there's 5 centers and sometimes there's more than 1 volunteer starting at a time and I can't be in 2 places at once. And then short-term projects have come up, like the home office called me and was like, hey, we have 1,000 calls to make to staff. Can we get some volunteers to help with that? And I was like, yeah, let's give them parameters and call all these people and talk to them about new vaccination requirements for the state. Next slide. I go over volunteer demographics now with even more pictures. A lot of the questions I get from staff via email, not the people that see this presentation, but like home office people or people from other departments are like, hey, I have a teenager in high school, can they help? And I sort of have a cap on how many people can contribute to the volunteer newsletter at once, just because the group doesn't need to be super big. But I do discuss, like, most people are healthcare professionals or students seeking more experience in their gap years. Maybe they take a year off of college, but most of them are college students. And then a few of them are community members or high school students who are spending their time in our virtual roles, waiting until they turn 18 and they can be in our in-person in-center roles. Next slide, please. Okay, you guys might all get a chuckle looking at this slide, but this is like my life every week. I get calls for people who are like, yeah, I have an issue with a staff member and I want to talk to HR. And I'm like, hi, you've reached the volunteer specialist. I am not the right person. Or I get emails from people who need like to get someone into the intern program, even though they missed the deadline. And I'm like, that's not me, that's Mikey. Mikey gets emails from people all the time. Like, this person really wants to volunteer and they don't understand where to go on the website. And she's like, that's Paula. So we put this slide in, we agreed to just sort of explain like paid or unpaid, if people need experience, if they have professional experience, or if they're offering their lived experience. So the third and even more confusing category for people is peer mentors. So patients who have been in dialysis for a while, who are offering their lived experience to new patients, so the new patients can understand what their treatment options are peer mentors, and they're organized by our social workers in specific centers. So I have nothing to do with that. Mikey has nothing to do with that. They're not students, they're not interns, they're not volunteers. It's a glorious confusion in our second year, but we hope things like this will help people figure out who they're supposed to be reaching out to if they want a quick answer. Next slide, please. So our purpose is to be a catalyst for the transformation of kidney care. And we talk about how involving volunteers is a way to boost our capacity to individualize patient care. So one of our main sort of goals as a company is to humanize healthcare, to make sure each of our patients feels like we are directly treating them, the individual, and not treating them like their diagnosis or just somebody sitting in a chair that needs dialysis. And putting volunteers in the lobby really was that first step to, hey, our patients are telling us they're sad in COVID because they don't get the time to chat with staff anymore. That was in our patient experience council. They said that, and it really hurt my heart. They were like, no one has time to talk to us anymore. It's not as friendly as it used to be. And I was like, wow, that's a lot. And staff are looking at me, you know, in meetings, giving me crazy eyes, like, do you know what I deal with on a daily basis? Like, I do not have time to do the chit chat about, oh, what did you do this weekend? And I was like, what if we put some volunteers in that mix, right? What if we throw somebody in the lobby who can chit chat as long as they're in the lobby? And staff were like, we could do that. We could have someone who just talks to people. That would be amazing. And that's how we arrived at our very first volunteer role. So we talk more about that in these things, like how is that going? How is involving volunteers individualizing patient care? Like how is that working? What more could they do? Next slide, please. So I break down this topic of like engaging volunteers, right? We say it professionally all the time. We're volunteer engagement professionals. We engage volunteers. Not everybody understands what that means, right? It's kind of a jargony term if you don't live with it on a day-to-day basis. So I talk about, if I say I engage volunteers, what do I mean by that, right? That they're supported by staff, they'll stay with us to enhance our work. If they feel disconnected, they're going to leave. So engaging a volunteer just means making a connection, making a relationship, making them feel like their time with us is valid. Next slide, please. This is a big point for me of sort of advocacy and building the program. How am I asking the center staff to engage volunteers, right? What am I actually needing them to do if they want volunteers to work with them? What do they need to do in return? They need to integrate the volunteers into their teams, which means, you know, acknowledging them and giving them support. Who knew? They can request new roles, right? So if there's that repetitive task that's not particularly clinical, they can ask for support. And then on a yearly basis, I need them to fill out evaluations and iterate and improve the program. I do sort of casual quarterly check-ins with volunteers and staff, but then on an annual basis, I do like a real evaluation cycle with a survey, et cetera. Next slide. So integrating volunteers, why first days matter. I stole this video from a Lives in Book Club on the power of moments. This is Chip and Dan Heath talking about first days, good experiences and bad experiences. So we play this, it's a real short clip. And then I ask staff, like, think back to the last time you started a new professional role, because not everybody volunteers, right? Try to accomplish a new task. I have a story about that. Volunteered a new organization, like what was it like to not know where you start, right? You're in a new space, you're unsure, you're passionate, like you've got a goal, you've got a vision, but you're a little unmoored, right? What helps you? What hurts you? You know, what gives you that determination to come back the next time, or what makes it easier to say, hey, I don't actually know this, right? So this sparks a really good conversation with staff. Some of especially the healthcare staff are like, you know, I work 4/12s and sometimes I fill in for other people. Most of our center managers are like covering extra centers. If we're out, staff are covering each other. All the people are out on COVID holds. Like it's nuts out there right now. And they might not be volunteering, but they have been in a new space. They have started something new. You know, we can talk about it from that point of view. Next slide, please. So I talk about how you integrate someone into your team, right? How do you integrate a new team member? How do you make sure they're comfortable and set up for success? And do you think of a volunteer as somehow inherently different or separate from the rest of your team? Why or why not? A lot of folks will say, yeah, they're not clinically trained. And I'm like, okay, well, we're going to talk about what they're trained to do. But it's true, they're not, dialysis techs, they're not nurses yet. That's what they want to get to, right? But they're here, they're part of our teams. You need to welcome them, get them oriented, give them support. If I'm not there past their first day, what do they need to know, right? If they're there, they go 2 or 3 weeks between dates of service. What do they need to know when they return? Something is changing with COVID every day. New process, new piece of paper, new this, new that, more questions, less questions, what have you. So what do they need to know to be set up for success? And then, I make the point, not everyone supervises volunteers, but everyone should be able to make volunteers feel welcome. And like Angela said, that's a hi, that's a smile, that's a thank you. Very simple. Next slide, please. I talk about risk, compliance, and integrity, that volunteers come to us with passion, and it's our job to do the risk and the compliance stuff. So next slide. So we're not rolling the dice. I tell staff this directly. Like, we have volunteer program risk management, we have training, we have background checks, drug tests, health information. They're getting HIPAA training on a yearly basis that compliance oversees, right? Compliance asks me, what information are you giving your volunteers about HIPAA? They sign off on it and the volunteers take it every year. They're getting OSHA training. They're getting role-specific training. You can identify them by their specific volunteer name tag. It's bright purple and it says Satellite Healthcare Volunteer on it and their name. They don't look the same as staff in that respect. And lastly, that we have a breakdown of both like management and supervision at the center level and at the program level. So like, I'm doing their compliance and their training and their integrity and their hours and all of that from the program side, and that staff are doing their management at the center level because they're the people who are seeing them on a day-to-day basis. Next slide. So we talk a little bit more about how compliance and volunteers interact, that there's training that volunteers complete yearly and one time, that they can't sign up for a volunteer role until they match those requirements, which is what I love about Better Impact as a database, that they have specific tasks and staff need to know what those tasks are so they stay within the volunteer role and they don't put the volunteer in an uncomfortable position asking them to do something they're not trained on. You might think like, oh, I just need you to do this, but that could put a volunteer in a bad situation and it could put all of us in trouble with compliance, who's going to frown at us and be like, that was the wrong choice. That volunteers are supposed to use common sense on an everyday average basis, refer to their handbook, refer to their training, but in uncertain situations or emergencies, they are directly to follow the instructions of staff. So setting that idea up with staff that yes, you can give a volunteer a direct command during an emergency and they will follow you. Absolutely. If the power goes out, if there's a fire alarm, whatever it is. Incidents, that incident reporting is the same for volunteers as it is for staff. You go directly to compliance, but then I would like you to circle back around to me to have a discussion about whether there's constructive response to be made. Is there more training? Is there a process we need to put in place? Like, how can we prevent that from happening in future? We've had no incidents in 2 years, but I want to put that out there to people like, this is on my radar. We control for this, we set up so we don't have incidents, but if we do, there's more work to be done. Next slide, please. So integrating volunteers is risk management. I will say this until I'm blue in the face, that the role of center staff is to know the volunteer role and limits, to provide positive feedback, to address concerns immediately, not 2 weeks later, thank you, telling me like, oh yeah, like a while ago, someone did something I didn't like. I'm like, that's not actionable, thank you. I appreciate your frustration, but you need to address it in the moment, and then you need to circle back with me if that doesn't fix it. That they can request clarification from me when needed, but that recognition of volunteer effort and the proper support means volunteers who will stay a valuable part of our teams. And that if they're giving the proper support, then volunteers will know when to ask questions, who to ask for help, where to get their new PPE. If like the size medium is out, where do they get more? They're not just going to skip it. They need a medium-sized gown. why HIPAA matters and how it's easy to mess it up on social media, especially, and what to do in an unfamiliar situation. So these are the ways we're setting up Volunteers for Success and how center staff get involved. Next slide. Talk about volunteers being accountable members of our teams, that we expect the same adherence to integrity and solid policy, whether they're paid or unpaid staff, but that staff need to think about what volunteers don't know they don't know, what's changed, and that they can help set them up for success. Next slide. And I end with Q&A, just like, what more can I provide? You know, what more do they want to know? What concerns they might have? There's usually very few concerns, but it's more like, what if they don't show up for their shift? Do we call you? I'm like, yeah, you can check the database to see if they canceled, or, you know, call me if it's like a chronic problem. And then I ask, you know, think about how else we could integrate volunteers and give me a call. Next slide. All right, over to you, Angela.
All right, thank you, Paula. That's great. So hopefully you're able to see little different presentations there on what we're doing and get some ideas for what you might be able to put together for your organization. And we really, Paula and I love networking, and along with Nicole R. Smith. So cliffhanger, hang on to the end to find out why that's important. I was talking with Carrie Hart, who is local in Delaware at the Bay Health Hospitals. And she's a great resource as well. And we've known each other for a long time. So I was like, oh, I'm doing this thing. And, you know, through a live, And she said, oh, well, here I have this MOU that you might want to share. So she's very graciously offered to share that. So you should be getting that in your email as an attachment as well. And so they actually have an internal website at the hospital, and they have a section for volunteer department, volunteer area. And so in that staff link, it says what a volunteer can and cannot do. It talks about how to request volunteers. It talks about a list of volunteer opportunities. And it also, they have this MOU, this memorandum of understanding between the department staff and the volunteer services. So I'm going to go through just really some highlights. It's multiple pages long, actually. So these are just the highlights. So the MOU includes why people volunteer, what volunteers can and cannot do, assessing your department needs, preparing volunteer worksite, department-specific orientation. And then, as you can see on here, the staff have to initial multiple times through this document, which I thought was great, because you're making them say, yep, I read it. Yep, I read it. So hopefully they read it, right? But it also has the principles of volunteer supervision, the volunteer's experience. It talks about coaching and on-site supervision. And again, initials, initials, initials. And then at the very end, they have to sign their full name that they have read this MOU and they will be following this. So it may or may not work in your organization, but another tool, another resource that we'd like to share. So thank you, Carrie, for that.
And that's the power of networking, right? Like, we are all constantly sharing. I am very big on not reinventing the wheel and sharing these sort of practical steps, right? We're all looking for like how we can move the needle in our organizations. And if you don't have to reinvent the wheel from scratch, like, don't do it. Share with people, come with ideas, ask us. Bethany put in the chat just now, like, can you share your presentation? There are some things that would be helpful. I'm like, yeah, absolutely. Reach out to me. Like, I will send you the presentation. It's not stealing if we're freely sharing our successes with each other so that we all get better at what we're doing. So that leads me to the next point here. What are you going to do with this training? Angela made a template of her new hire orientation where it prompts you to fill in the slides yourself. So you can grab that from the email after this webinar, and it'll be saved with a recording of the presentation as well, as will the MOU. If you all want it, and it's not just Bethany, I can throw my presentation copy as well in there if you'd like. If you just want to grab whole slides off that presentation and throw, we encourage this. We are going to run through the half hour, as Gretchen put in the chat, to talk about questions, networking. We're going to brainstorm, etc. Next slide. So what are your next steps? Reach out, network right now, right? I'm going to put our contact information in chat here. But both Angela and I, like we said, we're really big on networking. We're going to tell you the story of how this presentation came to be in a minute. It sounds like people want the satellite healthcare slide deck, so I'm going to include that. All right, share SHC slide deck. Gotcha. I wasn't sure if people would just want to like refer to it on the presentation or you want it in person. So that's cool. But network right now, if you have the time, if you can stay with us for the next 20 minutes or so, tell us what your issues are. Like raise your hand, come off mute, tell us what you're dealing with. Maybe we can help you brainstorm. If you prefer that one-on-one approach, reach out to us, please do. Grab us on LinkedIn, send us an email directly. Don't be that person who's like, oh, that's really interesting. I want to ask that presenter a question, but I don't feel like I can reach out to them. No. I'm telling you right now, nothing makes me happier than people who reach out directly.
Yes.
I geek out. I want to have these conversations. I want to network with all of you. So please do. All right. And Angela, why don't you tell the story of how this presentation came to be?
Absolutely. So as a high influencer, hopefully, of networking, so Nicole and Paula and I have just met intermittently through a live conferences or meetings or the COP and just a variety of ways. I can't even remember how we all started meeting, but anyway, the three of us had gone to a presentation about gamifying volunteer programs and things like that. And we were all like, hey, that's kind of a neat idea. And so the three of us were like, well, let's meet monthly and just see if we can work the three of us together and see if we can figure this out. And so it kind of morphed. And then at one point, one of the sessions, I said, hey, I just created this new hire orientation. I'm so excited. And so they took a look at it and both of them gave me great feedback. And so it's turned into what it is now because of their feedback. So I've gotten better. The presentation is better. And I really appreciated that. That was fabulous. And then hopefully if Nicole's on, she'll jump in and we'll get you on unmute so you can jump in and say what you did with it. But I really appreciated that. And then also Paula and Nicole were like, Angela, you should share this. I'm like, I don't know, doesn't everybody else do this? I just wanted some help to make it better. And they were like, no, not everybody else does this. So maybe some of you do, and that's 2 thumbs up for you. If you don't, then here, that's why you're here. And I'm so grateful that you can come. And so please take what you can out of this resource. And another thing too, during COVID, there were so many webinars that I started going to when I wasn't taking care of the canteen myself, when we didn't have volunteers or whatever, but I started feeling a little inept. And I've been doing this for a long time. And I was like, my gosh, I'm not doing that. I'm not doing this. I'm not doing that. And I should be doing that. And so I don't want this webinar to be like, oh, I can't get to that point. What I encourage you to do is just, again, start with one little thing. What is the one thing that you can pull out of this hour that we've been together? And write that down right now. What's the one thing that you can pull out of this and actually do? And then reference back to this as needed to be able to pull out more information. So I really encourage you to do that. And network. So I heard this from another presenter to put it on your calendar. And so I did. Every month now, I try to reach out to somebody new. And there's actually, I think a couple of you, I think I saw online or in the chat that are on, because I've reached out, not that you're here because of it, but I've reached out and I've gotten to know you because I just kind of scrolled through the CVA list on LinkedIn and I was like, oh, I don't know. Hey, that looks like an interesting person. So someday I might be calling you and you'll be like, oh, that's that, Delmarva Blood person. And so, yeah, I'll accept her invite to chat. So I really encourage you to just do that kind of networking. Is Nicole on?
Can we unmute her? That I'm not sure about.
I don't know. Gretchen, can we work on that?
She was here this morning.
Yeah.
She's here in the chat.
All right.
I don't know if we can.
You can promote her to panelist.
Aha.
Oh, Gretchen's
on it. Thank you, Gretchen, for being our tech person. We have 2 scenarios set up in the chat while we're working on that. Brittany says the biggest challenges she's seeing right now are what volunteers should not do. When she pushes or her department pushes and says it's an inappropriate role for volunteers, she gets back, well, we don't have a budget to pay someone, so you should recruit a volunteer. And it's specific to events. We have been there, let me tell you. We have all had people be like, well, shouldn't that be a volunteer role? And you're like, that's 5 days a week. That's a staff position. Or that's a position of critical importance. That's not something we can, give to a volunteer because it's clinical or because it's specific risk management for us. And I think that is a big advocacy point. You're going to need to find champions in your organization who understand your point of view when it comes to that's not a volunteer role. I had to say that about volunteers answering the phone at our clinics on Saturdays when we don't have front desk admins. They wanted to volunteer in the admin office to be able to answer the phone, pull up the computer database with all of our patient information. And I was like, that's not a volunteer role. It's too complex. There's too many changes. They're going to be there one Saturday out of the month. Like, put admins on Saturdays, please, if you need them to answer the phone and interact with the patient database. If you need someone greeting people in the lobby and running messages, I can have a volunteer do that. That's not access to our full computer system. Like, just doesn't make sense. So if they hadn't listened to me, I would have gone to my boss. I would have gone to my boss's boss, who's one of my big champions, and been like, I'm having a translation issue about risk management, right? And get those champions on your side who can explain to folks, like, stop pushing, this is a risk management issue.
And it may be too, depending on who you talk to, maybe your human resources person, director, staff person, to help them understand so that then they can go to the staff and say, not appropriate.
Right.
Whatever that is.
Whoever you need on your side to do that.
We are. Oh, I'm so sorry. You're in human resources. Oh my goodness.
Champions. If they won't listen to you, they'll listen to somebody else. And there's that weird statistic, like, people need to hear something 6 or 7 times before they adopt a change and actually make, like, change management a thing. Sometimes it's just not you saying it. Sometimes you say it 6 times and someone else says it the 7th time and someone goes, oh, I completely understand. And you're like, what am I, chopped liver? Have I not been saying that the entire time? It's like, when it hits somebody and who's saying it and what frame of mind they're in, it matters. Don't take it personally. Just find more champions.
Absolutely.
Nicole, are you on? Do you want to tell the story real quick of what you've done with this information so far?
I am here. Hold on.
That's great. So Nicole and Paula both encouraged me in this. So if you think, oh, these people know what they're doing, and they are just above me, no, wrong, lie. So we're all in this together, and I encourage you to think about presenting and going the next step, whatever it is. So Nicole, thank you.
Of course. So first of all, great job, ladies, by the way. So I, just like Angela had said, we were having this discussion, and she was like, oh, I just did this presentation. What do you think? And I was like, can I use this? Can I take this? She was like, sure. So literally the day after she sent it to me, I reached out to my supervisor, because I'm new in the role where I am, and I had reached out to my supervisor because I was like, I really want to get in on the onboarding process when new staff come in, because there's people in the organization who don't even know that we have volunteers. And so I was like, because we had just had an onslaught of new hires, about like 7 or 8 new hires. And I was like, hey, can I get like 15 to 20 minutes with each of them, just to, number one, introduce myself so that they introduce the department. These are the types of things that you can do. And then depending on the role, if it's people who I know are going to be directly working with volunteers, I have it crafted one way. And then for people who it's just like general staff that they might come in contact every once in a while, I crafted it a different way. But either way, just to get ahead of it. And my supervisor was like, that's a good idea. She was like, the whole leadership team, which is like, there's 4 of us, everybody should do it so that everybody can get familiar with everybody's department. So I was like, okay. So then I took the presentation, I adapted it, put the information that was relevant to me. And it went over so much better than I was expecting, because I just thought I was going to be like, hey, I'm just giving you some general information just so that you're aware, keep it moving. But to see people's faces literally light up and be like, oh, I hadn't thought about, oh, thank you for this, Nicole. This was really good. I didn't even know that piece of information or whatever it happened to be. And I was just like, wow, it resonated with people more than I ever expected. They were like, wow, that's something I had never thought of. Wow, that's something I will make sure to keep in mind. Wow, thank you for doing this. And I was just like, Angela, this is awesome. You have to share this. You must share this out, because a lot of times stuff that we think is just, I think we were talking about it right before it started, is an assumption or it's just common sense or everybody does it. You'll be surprised how many people don't. And I was moving around, so if I missed this part, I apologize. But Angela, I think you were talking about it took like, what was it, like 3 years of asking and knocking on doors and staff changes and all of that. And this is the beautiful part about the networking, because her 3 years opened up 5 minutes for me. She did all that work for me to be able to just mention it to my supervisor, and it just opened up the door. And so I'm grateful for that. Not only did she open up the door, she gave me the key and just like, and the red carpet. And then it turned out to be even better than I expected. And that feedback is going back to my supervisor, which is making me look good. So I'm just like, thank you. I was like, Angela, you have to share this out. People need this. Not only do they need it, but it works. So when she sends out that template, use it. It's going to blow your mind. Okay, I'm done.
That's awesome. Well, yes. And you can tell the three of us have a great time together, and it's a lot of energy and a lot of words. My husband's an introvert, and so he likes to say it's a lot of words. But we have a ball, and it's really helpful. I've grown a lot just interacting with both of these ladies and others of you that are out there as well. So thank you for that. Do we have any other questions or anything
we do.
We can
and
try?
I want to
Great.
respond to a couple of them. Brittany asked a couple of questions, but she's had to hop off for now, so we'll circle back to that later. But Nikki asks, has anyone taken over an established volunteer program and made changes to existing procedures and staff training? Yes, we have. Nicole's in the middle of doing that. That's what I did for 6 years at my previous job, and it was an uphill battle. We have been there. We are here for you. We would love to network with you and chat about that. Nicole.
I just wanted to throw out there, if the challenge is with volunteers in terms of them saying, well, so-and-so used to do it this way, so-and-so used to do it this way, so-and-so used to do it this way. The job that I had before, my boss did that to me for 3 years. Well, the person before you used to do it this way. So it was just a matter of, if you believe something works, just keep doing it. And once it proves itself, the naysayers will be quiet. But you just have to keep showing up and doing what it is that you're doing. And then, but like we said, on that aspect of it, happy to, jump in with others. Something huge that I wanted to throw out, if it's the other side, if it's programs, or if it's the staff, right, of people who are, maybe you're taking over for somebody who might still be there, or working with somebody, maybe they weren't running it, but maybe their assistant or whatever is still there, and you're trying new things and you're trying to do these things. What I found has worked marvelously, because I kept getting into the, hey, well, we're going to try this. Well, we already did that, and this is why it didn't work. And we already did that, and this is why it didn't work. And we already did that, and this is why it didn't work. So after about like the 15th time, and I was getting really frustrated, I kind of had an epiphany. And I was like, you know what? Why don't you just put a list down of all the things that you want to try, like brainstorm and all the things that you think that you want to try, give it to them and be like, hey, can you let me know, have you tried any of these things? If you did, what was the result? Did it work or did it not work? And about how long ago did you do it? What this does is 3 things. The first thing is it allows you to recognize them and the efforts that they have made. So it doesn't seem like you're just coming in and just trying to wipe over and take everything because I know everything. Because that's not what we're trying to do. We're natural like problem solvers. We just want to come in and like solve things. But sometimes it might feel to other people like, here, who is this person coming in, walking in like they know everything? You know, I've been at the organization for 30 years and they think they're just going to turn everything over, right? So it gives them that respect of, hey, what have you done? Then it sets the groundwork because now you're like, yeah, what did you do? And how did it work? And how didn't it work? And how recent was it? All that does is it gives you more information of how to move forward, because if it was something that you were about to embark on in the exact same way and it already didn't work, either one, you have the option to not do it, or you have an option to do it a different way, but you're building off of prior institutional knowledge as opposed to just coming in green. That has been so huge. And let me tell you, with the people that I was working with, once I started doing that, it kind of let them see that I did respect what they had done in the past. And we started bonding over stuff that we would have never had in a particular conversation had I never just asked. So on that side of it, I just wanted to throw that out because I was banging my head against it. I was like, this person told me one more time. They didn't. And what?
Yeah. And
but,
use your active listening and your affirmations, guys.
Yes.
Use those skills.
Yes.
Practice them with fellow peers if you need to, but train yourself in active listening that makes the other person feel seen, heard, and appreciated, and find those affirmations to support them in their own understanding of their efficacy and their efforts this far, and make them feel appreciated. Do it.
And make it feel like, thank you for trusting your baby with me. I promise to take it from here and treat it with the same amount of care, as opposed to just ripping it out of their arms and be like, I got
it. I'm a new person. I got my own plan.
Yeah.
Let's see. Someone else put in chat, my challenge now is meeting volunteers yesterday to do the work that staff should be doing, but the okay was given for a volunteer to assist. And so they expect me to produce volunteers who will be consistent, for half an hour from now for that big event or that new need or whatever. I have been there as well. And you're like, yeah, that's not how volunteerism works. I don't know if you know this, but they don't live in my back pocket. They're not on the shelf. I can't just put them on the game board like a chess piece. I think that is kind of goes back to that new hire training, or maybe starting with directors and supervisors, whichever one you think you can do first, to get people to understand, like, we have a training process for volunteers. There's an onboarding process. That process can take days or weeks, depending on how many levels we have. Arlette, I know you're in a healthcare situation like Angela and I. So we're like, yeah, onboarding can take upwards of 2 weeks, depending on like the health information, the tests, the background checks, all the things, the hoops we jump through for risk management, right? So it's not, even if you have like, here's my 50 volunteers who have said they're interested in helping with events or interested in helping with this particular piece, it doesn't mean you can ask somebody to turn on a dime and give you 5 cents change and be here in 5 minutes. That is not the way humans work. And that's especially not the way volunteerism now, after this, disruption and collective trauma in all of our lives. It's not how it works. We all have competing priorities. And I think the beauty of training staff or having these conversations about like, hey, when was the last time you signed up for something? When was the last time you volunteered? What did you need to make that successful for you? How much prep time do you need to just go out and do something on a given Thursday? I'm not, I'm like, I got to think about things. I got to think about who's taking care of the people I usually take care of. I got to think about, where's COVID at in my life, and who's this, and how many people are going to be there? Are they? All of these questions that go through all of our minds. Volunteers aren't immune to those pressures. They aren't immune to those needs. Like, I think a big piece of advocacy we all do on a, monthly basis with our staff is like, volunteers are human beings. They're unpaid staff. However, whatever considerations you would give to new staff, you need to give to volunteers, and they're literally not thing on the shelf that you can just put on a game board. It's not the way it works. So I think that's why this sort of training can be helpful, is, you know, a building, a starting point for the advocacy work that you're building, to be like, it takes time, it takes resources, it's not instant. You can't tell me, oh, hey, I'm having a big event tomorrow, can you have 30 people show up? No. The opportune moment for that was at least 3 months ago.
Yeah,
we've all been there.
Yeah, I've had that as well. Somebody said, oh, can you have a volunteer tomorrow? And I was like, I can ask. However, and I literally said this, kid, it like just went right out of my mouth before I could like filter it. And I was like, they're not sitting on my shelf up there in my office. And I thought, you know what? I think that's okay. I'm just going to let that ride. And it's true. And, you know, they're not just sitting up here on my shelf waiting to just jump out for you. So I agree with Paula. And hopefully this will help too. And thank you, Nicole, put her info in there. So that's great in the chat in case you want to reach out to her as well. And Paula and I will feel very, and I'm going to put Nicole, I think too, we would be very sad if you didn't contact us. So please, in some way, shape or form, not to say that we did a great job or anything about this, but just network. We would love to know that you're networking with somebody. Find other people in your area. If you're not part of, you're most likely already part of your local association of volunteer administrators. That's great. Alive has great programs like this. There's other ways to get involved with Alive, like the communities of practice. That's how I got in. That's how I met Paula and got in connection with her. Nicole, I can't even remember how we connected, but we did.
You were my mentor.
I know,
Oh,
but
also
before that
Alive.
too, I think,
Alive,
yeah. Yeah, so it's a great way. Well, we were like we're like peers, not mentor, really. So it's a great thing. So connect, and cheer, Nicole.
Well, Gretchen put insert cheerleading moves, so I figured I would.
Yes,
go ahead and do it.
And you know how to. That's good.
Yeah.
So
Awesome.
please
So
reach
what
out.
other questions? Yes.
I don't think we
Anything
have
else?
any. Arlette asked, would you mind reviewing my updated slides for training staff? I said I would be happy to. We're already connected, but absolutely, you know, everybody reach out. You'll get all the resources at the end of this. I'll send Gretchen my slide deck. Oh, and Kathy has a couple of follow-up announcements for Live, which we can't forget.
Really quick, last thing, I want to put out a challenge. After you all get these materials within the month, try it. And then contact Angela, contact Paula, contact my, oh my gosh, it worked. Oh my gosh, it didn't. But we want to hear from you, especially the wins. Let us know. And
the challenges.
Because
be there for you.
Yes, we can help
Brainstorm.
it.
Yeah. All right. We
Challenge.
are letting Kathy speak.
Okay, this was so great, you guys. Everybody's still engaged and we got so many people still here. This is amazing. So thank you, Angela and Paula. I'm gonna have Gretchen pull up the host slides while we kind of wrap things up. I love this topic. I have a question. What platform, Angela and Paula, did you use? Because your presentations were actually visually appealing. I was curious about that.
You're muted, Angela.
Sorry, I thought I unmuted. So I use PowerPoint. The actual, like the PowerPoint template frame is the blood bank enterprise one that I need to use. So that's a branded version. But I have flexibility with like where to put the photos and the text.
Wonderful.
And same here. My workplace has a couple different branded official slide decks in various formats for PowerPoint. And that's where all that purple comes from our logo and colors and such. But it's PowerPoint. And I encourage you to throw lots of pictures of volunteers actively doing their work in there because that helps staff a lot. All right, announcements, Kathy. We don't want to overrun your time.
No worries. Again, thank you guys so much, Paula, Angela, and Nicole. If you want to continue the conversation, obviously they put in their contact information for you to contact them directly, but we do have a place where you can engage with all your other peers as well. And that's in our LinkedIn Alive members only page. And Gretchen has that in the chat. So hope to see you there, and they'll be available for the next 48 hours. And if you enjoyed this Alive Academy, please save the dates. We've got August 17th, volunteer career mapping, turning our one-time volunteers into future leaders, presented by Alicia Morris Campbell, Director, Volunteer Expertise Hub from Habitat for Humanity International. September 26th is creating a more inclusive space for volunteers, presented by Darlene Laird and Joshua Rogers, also from Habitat. And then October 18th and 19th is our 2022 Volunteer Management Hybrid Conference. Gretchen, are we able to register individually for that yet?
Why, yes, registration just opened up this week. So if you go to, and I'll put the link in the chat, if you go to the Better Impact website, you can register as an individual, but there are lots of host sites in your area too. So check that out too for hopefully more great in person, but the individual will be strictly virtual.
Awesome. And then again, if you're interested, those other Alive Academies, if you go to the Alive calendar of events, you can click on the event and register right now for the following dates. So with that, again, thank you so much. We appreciate your presentation, and we'll see you all in August.
Oh, and I have just a quick announcement. Nicole, if you want to make that announcement, go ahead.
Okay. Just a reminder, the Alive Better Impact nominations for the Alive Better Impact Award nominations open August 1st. So nominate. There's prize money involved, up to $500 that can go towards professional development. So if you're looking to get your CVA or something else, that money can go to that. So if you feel like you deserve professional development, nominate yourself. If you know somebody who is just killing it in the profession, nominate them. You can do both. So look out for it. Nominations open on August 1st. Nominate. Elevate and nominate.
Here.
Awesome. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great weekend. Good job. Good work, everybody.
Thanks, everybody. Have a great weekend.